Springfield's Talk 1041 and a good Thursday morning. Welcome, everyone. Tomorrow, Friday, we will have our Friday Road Show at Scramblers, sponsored by Shirley's Heating and Air. Love for you to come join us. We do have Author of the Week today, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. We will be without Christy Fulnecki. She is, I know, I don't know what.
I think
More
we should
important
just,
than this.
Yeah, I know. I think we should just go home now.
Just
It's not Thursday without her.
No, some people may like it better. Some people like it worse. But, so if you tune in, she's not here. She's got other things going on. We'll make it through. We'll do it. You and me together. Lord knows there's plenty to talk about. Today, it is set to be announced or actually signed. I already realized I have my stories here. Here we go. Trump is set, yes, to sign the order shuttering the Department of Education today. So the squalling is really going to be ranked up there pretty high.
Get ready for the Hitler moment.
Yes, Hitler. My favorite thing anytime there is a discussion about the Department of Education and the potential shuttering of it is people on the left who hate Trump posting about how awful it is by revealing how bad things have been under the Department of Education. You may have seen some of these postings as well. They'll be like, 40% literacy rate, and they start listing all the stats about how far we are behind other countries in the world, and they're like, and now Trump wants to drop the Department of Education. Like, yeah, what do you not get about what you're posting here? Like, you are making the point. Of course, it is legitimate to say, well, we don't know for sure the Department of Education is fully responsible for the decline, but you certainly can't argue it's needed and good. It would be a separate situation, of course, if since the Department of Education came into existence, which was in the 80s, early 80s, we saw marked improvement of results. That would be at least a starting point. You could say, okay, well, out of the gate, we see that the moment that that department began being involved in education on a federal level in this country, we began seeing improvements, an acceleration of improvements. One would still need to investigate to determine whether or not there was a connection between the development and launching of the Department of Education and the increased improvement, but that would at least signal there could be some connection there. That does not exist. Doesn't exist. Things have gotten worse. People who want to continue doing the same thing over and over again when the result has been failure, they are either, in the context of the Department of Education, they are either ignorant, and by that I mean not in an insulting way, they just don't understand what the department does. They don't understand, what it means. They don't understand the current problems we have within our education system. They may not even know that we have problems. Or they don't care about kids' education at all. They're all part of this big slot machine of money and control. No rational person who actually cares about children's education would spend a moment trying to defend the existence of this institution. In fact, if you really, truly care, then you would support the elimination of this department. But what many of us have known, but we're really seeing it rise to the surface as the Trump administration is doing what former past presidents have claimed that they support doing, and that is eliminating broken departments, redundancy, fraud. Trump's just the first one to actually do it. And what we've seen is the rising of the surface of people exposing themselves as benefactors of this broken system. and exposing themselves as individuals that don't really ultimately care about the results. We've got traffic coming up here in a moment. There's these two stories juxtaposed together I find to be somewhat interesting. And the AP has a story about FDA staff having to return to the office, this after the order from the Trump administration saying, you got to start coming to work. No more of this sitting at home and, quote, working from home. Those days are over. You can get off your butt and you can come in. And you would think, the way that the story reads, these are people that have been dropped off in some foreign land in some sort of Survivor or Hunger Games style scenario, because it's just the way that it's written. These people have been dropped into this crazy ultimate nightmare double dare style game show where they have to fight for their survival, and it's just total and complete chaos. Then another story, and it's an investigative report from the Daily Wire about the FMCS, the Federal Mediation and Conciliation Service, okay? And I'm telling you, I'm going to read through you this is one of the departments that Trump has ordered to be downsized or eliminated. And you read through it, and it is a farce. It makes your blood boil when you realize what it is that these agencies have been doing or not doing, and then how the left screams at the idea of these institutions going away and playing the victim card for the people who are going to lose their jobs. So that's some of what we have to come. The Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line is 447 KSGF. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 52. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 66. And looking ahead to Saturday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 68.
Netflix dropped the documentary about the Joplin tornado yesterday or last night, or I don't know exactly what time it was. Some weird time. It was like 2 a.m.
Yeah,
or something
like that.
Something weird. The twister inside the storm, I think is what it's called. And you said you watched it as well.
Yeah, I really liked it. I mean, there was they like went off in tangents a little bit a couple different times, but
Yeah, and sometimes when I see that happen, I think, well, they in their mind they had this window of length that they wanted to
correct.
hit. You probably think, well, you don't want it to be too short, you don't want it to be too long, and so sometimes you put, and maybe at times, as if I'm some sort of film director, but at times, maybe they just think that it's interesting and it's stuff that they wanted to leave in there. So if you haven't seen it, I recommend you see it. I suspect people who, in one form or another, had a connection to it, it's probably going to hit a little differently than people that had no connection whatsoever.
I found myself like just really anxious at parts. I'm like,
Mm.
I know this happened. I know the
Yeah.
outcome of it, but I don't know. Did you have the same
Well,
kind of feeling?
sure, and of course I'm, you watch it, and what I'm naturally doing, having, of course, went to high school in Carthage and worked in Joplin for years, and my wife is from Joplin. I lived in Joplin, and so I'm just, as you're watching footage, looking for landmarks. Oh, I remember that. So
Right.
so if you have lived, even if you weren't in the tornado, you find yourself engaged in that capacity that someone who maybe has never been to Joplin would, lack that particular sort of engagement. And then, of course, many of us, and some of you listening probably went through it. But if you didn't, there's a good chance you know someone who did. Or you traveled over there. We did the show just days after the tornado on the campus of which was Missouri Southern at the time. And, they had Red Cross was set up there, and it was sort of a hub, if you will, of activity. And we did the show with Luke Davis, who at the time had Davis Cellular. And I just remember at that time, of course, cell phone service was so shoddy, but he had a hotspot that he set up. And I think I didn't even know what a hotspot was at that time. I was like, well, what is this? And he goes, oh, yeah, it'll create a cell signal. And so we were able to broadcast because of that. And so if you haven't seen it yet, there's two things that I was like, they essentially follow different people who were in the storm in a pretty intense capacity. There is one guy who was at high school graduation 15 minutes before it all hit the fan. There was a group of 3 younger people. It was a sister, brother, and then a friend of theirs that went through it together. Then there were these 2 other guys that were just sort of caught up in it. They were out just cruising around the back roads, and they didn't even realize anything was coming. There was a kid. I thought this was a particularly interesting story, and I thought in a weird way this kid hit the jackpot. There's some 13-year-old kid from San Diego who's obsessed with weather. So much so that he was with a local TV station, gave weather reports as a teenager, and he got bored with weather in San Diego. It was San Diego, correct? Was it in San Diego? Yeah.
So.
And so because he was just obsessed with weather, wanted to go where there was what he said was actual weather, and he sent out emails to meteorologists all over the Midwest. And Doug Hetty, which has been a longtime meteorologist in Joplin at KOAM, and I think it's KOAM, yeah, or KODE, but I'm pretty sure KOAM. Either which way. And he was the only one who responded to this kid, because the kid wanted, can I come out and job shadow you for a while? And he's like, yeah, but I need to talk to your mom first. And so the mom, they flew in that day. They landed that day of the tornado, and they were at a restaurant eating. They had just checked into the hotel when all hell broke loose. And so I thought, man, that kid hit. in a weird way, the jackpot. He was wanting to come to the Midwest so that he could experience, maybe what it was like to see a storm, and then, of course, the most massive storm to hit in modern era, and so destructive as it was. And so he and his mother experienced that firsthand. And then there was this other guy, and he, I was trying to think how best to describe this. His whole theme was being gay.
I know.
And
I
it
know.
was
That's
like,
why I said it went off on a tangent.
I mean, it was
I
just
didn't know how to word it.
like that. That's what the whole thing. His whole background that he gave is that he was gay, and there's so many Christians in Joplin that even though he said he's a Christian, but he hated it because he was bullied because there were so many Christians, and it was just like the whole theme kept going back to him being gay. And I try to, in my mind, I'm like, all right, well, that's who he is. That's his, right? That's his life, his story. And so, what's he supposed to do? Not talk, if that's what the central theme of his life is. But I think that it suffers a bit because average people are just so tired of that being injected into everything, even in instances when it may be natural and organic. Maybe they just found, because of his experience, this guy, and they're like, tell us your story. And that just happened to be it. But just the redundancy of that subject matter everywhere sort of, makes it like, oh, here we go. But it's not like the theme of the entire documentary by any stretch. It's just sort of his theme in particular. And then at the very end, did you watch the end where it made the statement about
Yes.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. So then it gave a false statement. Essentially, at the very end, it was a simple little, due to climate change, the number of storms have increased in intensity and so forth, in which this is not factually true. This is largely a stereotype based off the fact that of financial damage reports and how over time they've gone up. Well, that's just because there are more people with more expensive buildings. And so the destruction itself has increased because there are more things to destruct. And that's largely what that myth is based off of. But outside of those two little things, I thought it was done very, very well. It was a combination of interviews, dramatic footage that was not actual footage of the event, but
And then they had
sort of-
home footage too.
yeah, and there wasn't a lot. They aren't trying to trick you into thinking, oh,
You'll know the difference.
You'll know the difference, and it mostly was done for what I thought just transition from one to the other. But the particularly the girl with her brother and her, I mean, a lot of it's just audio because they are taking shelter in a liquor store, and when you see afterwards what they, I mean, it was just remarkable. Now, I have surround sound, and so that some of the audio of it when they are just screaming and trying to locate each other, and the debris and the wind and the thunder, it's pretty remarkable. And then just some of the stories, the guy who got sucked out of the car and flew through and survived it. It's just, I felt that it was very, very compelling. I also felt if you are someone who actually went through it, I could see how you may not be able to sit through and watch the whole thing just because I don't think it was gratuitous in nature. It wasn't produced in a manner that like, oh, well, we're really going to milk this for everything we can. I felt that it was pretty much as straightforward as possible with giving people a real sense of what happened as best as possible, what it was like to go through it, and then how it, just these personal stories, these individuals that went through it. So I recommend it. I think that it was really good. I remember at one point thinking this would be really impacting to see in a movie theater.
Yeah.
Particularly with the sound to it and just hearing the absolute raw, unfiltered fear of the voices of the people in the middle of it. And when they talk about how at one point it just all of a sudden the sun comes out, and some of them realize this is just halfway through. It's the eye of the tornado. And while others were thinking it was over, and they had to tell them, no, this is not over. It's just, it's very chilling. And I thought it was really good.
Yep, I agree with you. It was really good.
And as I said, I'm sure that people who have a personal connection, it is going to be more deep and impacting than perhaps someone who has never been through a tornado, or don't live in the area. It may be different to them. One of the things that I did find interesting, that I wondered if people think, well, these Midwesterners are stupid, is what I have always noted, and it's so true, particularly prior to the tornado. When tornado sirens would go off, you didn't pay a whole heck of a lot of attention to them.
Yeah.
Because it just was something that happened quite often. And that was touched on a couple of times. In fact, whenever they were talking with the mother from San Diego, and they sat down in the restaurant, the tornado sirens were going off, and she said to somebody in the restaurant, hey, we're from San Diego. Is this something we should be worried about? And they're like, oh, no, this happens all the time.
Yeah, it happens all the time.
Yeah, don't worry about it. And there were a couple of other references to, oh, that's a tornado siren, and if you aren't accustomed to it and you live in an area in which you've never heard a tornado siren, just the chilling nature of it, and then are these people stupid? What do they mean you weren't worried about it? And just the difference in perception of people who live in an area like we do, in which that is a common sound, and it doesn't mean you completely ignore it, but you don't panic necessarily like you would if you had never heard one before. The time I lived up in Wisconsin, they were very, very rare. And I remember one going off once, and it was somewhat of a panic. And I would tell people where I'm from that sound means you go out on your front porch and you look around or go out into the street. I said, that's how it is where I come from, because now this was before the Joplin tornado, of course, because we're just very used to those going off. But anyway, it's on Netflix. It is called The Twister Inside the Storm. And I think it's pretty good. I recommend it. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Text message on the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. When we were kids in the 80s, there was a talking point about Joplin having a large gay population, similar to San Francisco by size. No idea if that's true. Maybe they heard that too. Now, let me tell you, this is absolutely true. One of my really good friends I met when I worked in Joplin, and that was because he moved from San Francisco to Joplin for a job in which he would be my boss, and we became, really, really good friends. We're friends to this day. And he had told me after, and when he moved to Joplin, he didn't tell anyone that he was gay, largely because he was warned that's the Bible Belt. You better watch out. And the people, and he thought at the time he was a lefty because he was told, you're gay, that means, you have to be a Democrat. Republicans hate gays. Christians hate gays. This is what he was taught. But he really wanted to get into management of radio and running radio stations, and he knew that the way to do that, he was just on air in San Francisco, was to move to a smaller market. And so he got hired in Joplin. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember correctly, I was the first person at some point he, came out to in Joplin. Of course, he was out as a person. And he had told me about how he had been told by lefties, all of his friends in San Francisco, don't go there, it's the Bible Belt. And he claimed that he had done research at the time, and he found, this is what, I don't know where he found it, per capita, Joplin was, so this would have been, I don't know, 1998, 99, somewhere around there, that per capita, Joplin had the highest gay population, second only to San Francisco. Now, where he found that information, I don't remember. I guess I figured there were, secret websites for gay people to find that sort of stat. But, over time he would learn, actually, he was very conservative, and he had just been told, because you're gay, this is how you're supposed to believe. And he also learned that when it came to areas like the Bible Belt, really, for the most part, people didn't care. I mean, they may not necessarily agree with it and believe in it, but do your own thing. It doesn't matter. And it really made him realize that how bigoted people in the cities that are of the left are about people who are different from them, and how they stereotype them in ways that are completely untrue. But so that, hearing that back in the 80s doesn't surprise me about Joplin, given that, and that when I had been told that by him, that was research he had done before he moved to Joplin, and that was part of the reason he went ahead and did it, because he felt, well, I guess there's some safety in numbers, when he still believed the stereotype about people in the Midwest and, gay bashing and everything, that I had never heard that. I didn't know that until he had shared it with me. So, there's apparently some truth to that. A traffic update, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 52. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 66. And looking ahead to Saturday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 68.
The hysteria that the media themes with stories regarding pretty much anything that Trump does, at times it does become comical. And from the beginning, the Democrats and the media, and of course they're one and the same, have portrayed any alterations to the way bureaucracy is run, any sort of efficiency, DOJ-related efforts, is portrayed as creating this total and complete chaos. Not too unlike the Joplin tornado. I mean, it's just this, and you could see the theme, and it spanned all different media outlets. The use of the term confusion over and over and over again. You know, a Trump order striking confusion and chaos. And remember the one story where it was portraying some department as scrambling to take down all the LGBTQ stuff, like it, as if it was a fire and people were given 30 seconds to grab all of their valuables. It's like, how much LGBTQ stuff do you have around? You're scrambling like madmen to try and get rid of it all. And so, they just portray it all as total chaos. And this story, this is an Associated Press story, and I just want to read to you parts of it. FDA staff returned to crowded offices, broken equipment, missing chairs. Thousands of employees returned to the Food and Drug Administration's headquarters Monday to find overflowing parking lots, long security lines, and makeshift office spaces without chairs and other basic supplies. The FDA is the latest agency scrambling to meet the Trump administration's return to office mandate, part of a flurry of actions, including firings and buyouts intended to radically shrink the federal workforce. Monday was the first day that all rank-and-file FDA staffers were required to report to offices, including the agency's 130-acre campus just outside of Washington. The AP spoke with more than half dozen FDA staffers, so I guess that's 7, if it's more than, between 7 and 11, who described long lines to park and clear security, followed by hours of hunting for space and supplies in offices that were not designed to accommodate the agency's full workforce. The staffers spoke on condition of anonymity because they were not authorized to speak to the media. One staffer described, quote, chaos and lost work hours. Oh, see, lost work hours. So this is actually making government less efficient is the message you're supposed to get from this. While many agencies switched to telework during COVID pandemic, FDA began embracing the practice a decade earlier. Most employees had the option to work from home at least 2 days a week. Flexibility that was seen as a competitive perk for recruiting highly trained experts who can often earn more working in industry. What I think is hilarious is the description of there's a contradiction that is oftentimes created in these stories. On one hand, these are generally described as the most brilliant working minds, the most capable individuals in existence, which is why they're desperately needed. Yet they all act like it's their first day as an intern when it comes to figuring their way around change. Like, they're all running around, they're all confused, they're all scared, none of them know what to do, and so all of a sudden they go from the pinnacle of the workforce to some frightened intern in over his head. By 7:30 a.m., many on-campus parking lots were full with cars parked along side streets, according to employees. Some workers reported waiting up to an hour to clear security checkpoints, and photos viewed by the AP showed lines of employees winding out doorways, along sidewalks, and around corners. Once inside, employees confronted broken desks, missing chairs, and locked offices for which They did not have keys. One employee said, quote, all of the staff is definitely bending over backwards to make an impossible situation work and get their work done. Some employees were left to scour the campus for chairs and other essentials. One staffer saying, people are looting chairs from conference rooms and other buildings. We have no supplies. People are hunting all around the building on campus for pads of paper and other basic. The story goes on and on. It is cartoonishly ridiculous. And the way they paint this, like, oh, I need a chair. I don't have one. I'll check another office. You know, we've done that before.
Yeah. That's why we have a chair that doesn't match the other chairs right over there.
Yeah. We have a supply closet as well. That's where we go whenever I need a pad of paper and a pencil and I don't have one, or I run out of staples. They take these normal, everyday scenarios that many of us experience in the office place, and sometimes they're frustrating. You know, I can't find the toner for the printer. Oh, we're out of it. We've got to order some. And those are normal everyday things. But in this context, it is the end of world chaos created by Trump and Elon Musk. And my God, these people are just running around screaming. They portray the imagery of that opening scene from The Office where Dwight decides to put everyone through some sort of fire drill and they all panic because they don't know what to do. And these stories are written in order to invoke that sort of imagery. And when you understand what is going on, it is comical. And it does, you know, it makes you laugh. But then at the same time, you realize there are people who read this stuff. And they believe they get sucked into the theatrics of it. And of course, if they already hate Trump anyhow, this is just validation for that hatred. Now, this is the Associated Press. This is the same outfit that had to correct its false story and its false headline that Tulsi Gabbard claimed Donald Trump and Putin were very good friends when she was actually talking about the leader of India. You know, just an incidental mistake. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. Again, welcoming the Pinniger family, becoming part of the KSGF family. The Pinniger family acquired the family-owned Honda dealership back in 2021, and if you've driven by it lately on South Campbell, you may have noticed they're undergoing massive renovations. They're going to have a grand opening of the new building for Honda at the end of April, and it's state-of-the-art, latest technology, and meant to just, you know, because purchasing a vehicle is a big decision, and sometimes it can be intimidating. And, just having very accommodating surroundings, I think, is something that's pleasant. And one of the things that they don't lead with this, but I find it very interesting. They have a disproportionately high number of female car salespeople, and that is something that a lot of people just aren't necessarily accustomed to. And I don't. It's not like any sort of quota or anything. It just sort of organically happened that way. But I also think that a lot of times, and I'll stereotype here, people feel, men and women, that guys are just a little more, what's the word I'm looking for? Just more about making the sale. They lack compassion sometimes. And there is a comfort level that people oftentimes have with women that they don't have with men. And when it comes to a big purchase like that, I just think that having the option of somebody who sells vehicles that's a female, particularly for another female and a female perspective of vehicles and what is important to female, a mom with kids, that is an offering that you don't find everywhere. In fact, I was thinking to myself, I don't know that I can really think of ever interacting other than, the experience I've had with the Pinnegers, a female that, is selling vehicles there out in the lot and the floor. So that's just, one of the things that does make them unique, and excited about that big opening of the new Honda facilities. And, of course, having the Pinnegar family part of the KSGF family now. We're talking about this AP story and the continued hysterics of any sort of requiring change or efficiency. And the latest is the FDA scrambling, all the employees scrambling to get back to work on time because this is a new requirement that the COVID days are over. There's no need to remotely do things when you can come into the office and do them. And so the way the story is written is this total chaos. People waiting in line for hours, and they can't find pens and paper, and their chairs are broken. And my God, it's like they've never been in an office before. And Sarah made a point, like, what made it such shambles to begin with? Why is it that the way that it's described, if it is accurate, it makes it sound like it's a post-apocalyptic world? It is some sort of zombie apocalyptic world. It's The Walking Dead, and these people have stumbled upon an office building. Half the blinds are down, and you got the flickering overhead fluorescent lights, and papers are strewn everywhere, and chairs are in the middle of the floor, and they're overturned. That's the way that they describe it. How did it get that way? What happened, if that is an accurate description? Were there people in there other than FDA employees at some point? Or is that how FDA employees left it? It also, I would argue, these are people that we are supposed to feel some level of comfort and security in knowing that they are in charge of all things food and drug in our country, a country of 350 plus million people, massive bureaucracies. And we are supposed to feel secure that they know how to run everything food and drug in this country, from New York City to Los Angeles and every small town and big town in between. Yet apparently they can't run an office. Apparently they are incapable of working in and running an office in an efficient manner, because this is, these people are portrayed as victims here. What can they be expected to do? That's how the Associated Press and all of the standard media describe these particular scenarios. These are victims who are just doing what they can to get by. If they are incapable of running an office without panicking, without going to the press because I got to my desk and there were no pins. I had to go find pins. My God, what world are we living in today? I don't know that we should feel real secure with those people being in charge of all things food and drug in this country. That's just my ignorant, hillbilly, Bible-thumping, flyover country opinion. But I'm a simpleton, see. I don't have some fancy degree and a whole bunch of awards for all of the great government work that I do, so I can't begin to understand the complexities of running around frantic because I can't find a pad of paper. Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. And some of your messages in the Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line, and I was sharing this Associated Press story that is about the return under Trump order of FDA employees to the actual office place. And the story portrays it as if it's like this post-apocalyptic world, total complete chaos, people waiting hours to find parking spaces, and the panic. They, off the record, they talk to anonymous employees because they were not authorized to talk to the press. And some of them, their chair at their desk was missing. And some had to go to the supply closet and find a pad of paper to write on because there wasn't one at their desk. It's just total and complete chaos. One of the messages, Nick, where I work, when people went remote, they stole everything. They took monitors with them, chairs with them, everything. Then when we had to return to work, they acted like, oh, well, we don't have what we need to do our job. So they either had to bring things back, which mostly didn't happen, or the company had to buy all new stuff. And another asking to this point, I have a question. If they were working from home, what happened to all the supplies? They had it home because, they were not purchasing it for themselves. And then I supervise a small group of 5 staff. We just recently added a 5th person. It was my responsibility to have everything ready for my new employee. It wasn't my boss's job, the CEO's job, or the job of the board of directors. The various managers of the different departments should have gotten things ready. Instead, they made sure it was chaotic to make Trump look bad. And I suspect that there is some of that goes on. There's one of two things here that are, let's say that we accept the premise that it's total and complete confusion and chaos for people to return to physical work within the FDA as ordered by Trump. Now, in a situation like that, to the point of the person who texted in there, you should be prepared for that. You should recognize, all right, these are people, and that there may even be some new hires who have never been there before. And so, this is going to be for a lot of these people the first time, or it's been years since they've been in. And so with that will come distractions, will come some potential chaos. How do we streamline this? What do we do in order to minimize that? What do we do in order to instill confidence in the incoming employees that we have our crap together and we know what we're doing, as opposed to giving them a total sense of insecurity and chaos? That's part of what you do in management. And maybe that's having whatever the deadline is. The deadline is, on a particular day for everyone to come in. Maybe instead you make it a 4-day return where 25% of the employees come in on one day, like 4 days before the actual deadline, and then another, grouping, and it could be either alphabetical or based off the jobs themselves. That there are certain jobs you think, all right, if we have these people in place, we spend a day going over here's how things are going to play out and explain to them the next wave of people that are becoming, in, like maybe HR people would be first, and, a certain level of management would be first, and the people that are able to answer questions about things, those that have natural leadership abilities so that everybody get on the same page about messaging and creating a theme of, hey, listen, we know everyone's been away for a while, but listen, we're going to make this happen. We can do it. We're the best. We're the brightest. We're going to prove that we've got this. But instead, one of two things is occurring here. Either they deliberately make it chaotic in order to prove a point that Trump is just out of control and chaotic, or they have no real leadership capabilities. And they really genuinely don't even think that there's no management ability, there's no leadership ability. And it may never even cross their mind. They may not even be able to comprehend how to make this a smooth transition, how to make this a successful transition. There was a time, culturally speaking, and I bet in certain industries this still exists, an institution would take pride in the fact that they were able to make a transition of that magnitude flawlessly. That would be what they would talk to the press about. Even if there were bumps in the road, they would highlight, this is an example of how competent we are. That we took a situation that many people would not be able to handle, and because of our management, because of our leadership, and because of our employees, we pulled it off. But instead, what do? They find virtue in chaos. They find virtue in incompetence. And that's what they lead with. Springfield's Talk 1041. I am Nick Reed. KSGF.com, your chance to win some cool stuff. Currently, live in Collective Soul this summer with special guest Our Lady Peace in Grayland, Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Friday, August 22nd. Go to KSGF.com and you can get yourself registered to win for that. Also, a Godfather's Pizza Party in your Teacher's Lounge. We delivered our first, was it last Friday?
Yeah,
that we
it was.
delivered over to Willard. And we will do another one probably in a few weeks or so. About once a month, we'll pick a winner and deliver you some pizzas and just have a nice little pizza lounge party. And the reason we do this is because I remember growing up, and sometimes we'd have a pizza party, or I've heard over time, radio stations doing win a pizza party for your kids' class, and a lot of times it's geared towards teachers, and really it's not oftentimes fun for the teacher. Especially if they're younger kids. And so we thought, you know what? No, screw the kids.
Yeah,
They're the ones that always get the cool stuff. They're always the ones that get the fun. They should have recess for teachers, where the teachers get to go out at recess and the kids have to stay inside. And so anyway, this is our way of reversing things a bit and allowing you to register to win a pizza party for your Teacher's Lounge. Now, you don't have to actually be the teacher, or you could just work in a school. In fact, if I remember correctly or understood it correctly, the person who registered that one, the one from last week, it was actually the husband of somebody who worked in the Willard School District. So he registered her. So you feel free to do that.
Yeah, you can nominate.
Yep. Yeah, no problem at all. So you just go to KSGF.com and do that, and then we'll contact you if, in fact, you do win. So good luck on that. A couple more of your text messages regarding the panic that apparently ensued whenever the people within the FDA had to actually return to work per orders from President Donald Trump. And there was an AP story that, of course, portrayed it as almost a Hunger Games style panic. Running around, the office was in shambles. It took hours to find parking spaces. People's chairs were broken and they couldn't find pens, and it was total and complete chaos. One of the text messages, I would think that prior to them coming back to work, there would have been some kind of meeting with the managers, upper management, middle managers, shift managers, whatever they would understand what was going on and how to handle all of this. So I can see that building would be like somebody had, or I can't see how that would be like somebody ravaged through it in some sort of post-apocalyptic world. And again, it means one of two things. Either the FDA has been run by totally incompetent people, or, some of these individuals. And when I say run, you got to understand, again, there may be some new person at the top, but they are not going to be micromanaging much of who sits in what office and making sure the supplies are there. That is going to be people that are probably at this point still holdovers from probably multiple administrations. And, there could be a lot of anti-Trump people there, and just a deliberate, let's make this as chaotic as possible so that we can craft a story for the AP to write, which will then be carried by other news outlets about what a horrible move this is. Now, here's an opposite. My sister works for the government. A week before they had to return to work, people in charge of her office went to the office building with some of the employees and made sure that everyone was ready. Wow, that was simple and smart, even for government employees. I'm going to share with you coming up. We've got news. Inside the now shuttered federal agency where employees lived like reigning kings. And I'm telling you, I know that you think it's just the things that have been able to go on. And here's what's crazy about it. This is a federal mediation and conciliation services. Now, you may say, what is that? I don't know what that is. Apparently, hardly anyone did. Because it was like never used other than the employees having their friends and family members contract them and get money from them. I mean, it was just one giant grab and dash money for friends and family. And the thing was, the people, they didn't even really deny it or hide the fact that it was. And this is just one of countless different divisions of the government. Yet, when something like this gets closed, or what is it that the media focuses on? See, they don't talk about these things. No. Because that might lend credence to what Trump is doing. No, instead, they have to find these extreme examples of, some one-off situation in which somebody maybe had their position eliminated, and then within 24 hours, of course, the administration realized, no, actually, we should keep that, and so they fixed it. Which, by the way, anytime a mistake has been made, it has been known because this administration has found it and corrected it. We should praise that, not criticize it. During that cabinet meeting, Elon Musk explained, this was a few weeks ago, we played audio of it, telling all the cabinet members, hey, this is what we're doing, and said, listen, we're not perfect, we're going to make mistakes, and he even gave an example of a mistake. Isn't that what we want from people in government? When they make a mistake, they find it, and they admit it and fix it? Oh, no, we can't have that. That proves that they're screwing up. No one, the expectations, particularly amongst the left, that have been created in which failure is somehow a virtue. And when that is so virtuous, when you do fail, God forbid, you don't correct it, and you certainly don't tell anyone you corrected it. That's where the failure comes in. That is their perspective. Here's news.
In the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies with a high near 52. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 66. And looking ahead to Saturday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 68.
All right, I'm going to start sharing this from the Daily Wire investigative report. Inside the now shuttered federal agency where employees lived like reigning kings. One of the 7 small federal agencies that President Donald Trump ordered downsized or eliminated on Friday was rife with corruption, with its employees hiring their own friends and relatives, commissioning paintings of themselves, and using government credit cards to indulge in constant luxuries. The Federal Mediation and Conciliation Services, FMCS, occupied a 9-story office tower on D.C.'s K Street for only 60 employees. Now, they occupied the whole 9-story building. 60 employees, many of whom actually worked from home prior to the pandemic. Its managers had luxury suites with full bathrooms. One manager would often be in the shower when she was needed, while another used her bathroom as a cigarette lounge. FMCS recorded its director as being on a years-long business trip to D.C. so he could have all of his meals and living expenses covered by taxpayers simply for showing up to the office. FMCS is a 230-employee agency that exists to serve as a voluntary mediator between unions and businesses. As an independent agency, its director nominally reports to the president, but the agency is so small that, in effect, there's no oversight at all. And it showed, becoming a real-life caricature of all the excesses that the Department of Government Efficiency has alleged takes place in government. This reporter spent a year investigating the agency a decade ago, and I found egregious and self-serving violations of hiring, pay, contracting, and purchase card rules. One thing I could not discover is why the agency actually existed, other than to provide luxurious lifestyles for its own employees. Endless junkets to resort destinations, which employees openly use to facilitate personal vacations, were justified as building awareness of the agency in the hopes that someone would actually want to use its services. FMCS seemed quite clearly to exist for the benefit of those on its payroll, and not much else. One employee told me, quote, "Let me give you the honest truth. A lot of FMCS employees don't do a hell of a lot, including myself. Personally, the reason that I've stayed is that I just don't feel like working that hard. Plus, the location on K Street is great. Plus, we all have these oversized offices with windows. Plus, management doesn't seem to care if we stay out at lunch a long time, so can you blame me?" Top FMCS official George Cohen used a recreation and reception fund to order champagne and $200 coasters for his office, and to purchase artwork painted by his wife. The tiny agency commissioned paintings for its top employees. As one employee told me, quote, "Like they were reigning kings or something. I've never seen anything like it before." It spent $2,402 retouching the portrait of someone who briefly held the top job in an acting capacity. FMCS employees unblocked their own government credit cards to turn off typical abuse protections. Then they used them to apparently fund personal expenses and simply bill anything they wanted to the taxpayer. One employee leased a BMW. Another, the IT director James Donnan, billed the government for his wife's cell phone, cable TV, at both his personal home and his vacation home, and his subscription to USA Today. Employee Dan Funkhauser used his FMCS card to rent a storage unit near his home in rural Virginia, 2 hours from the office he supposedly worked at, which was used to store personal possessions such as a photo album of his dog. His dog Buster. Funkhauser also spent $18,000 at a jewelry store near his home and destroyed all purchase card records upon leaving the agency, an audit found. When Charles Burton retired from FMCS, he incorporated an LLC to which another FMCS employee paid $85,000 using his purchase card, listing it as a call center service, even though the company had neither a website, not even a working phone. When an accountant, Carol Booth, blew the whistle on the financial abuses to the General Services Administration, which manages purchase cards and contracting, Cohen forced her to send an email, which he wrote under her name, rescinding her statement. Like something out of The Office, the employees spent an inordinate amount of time and money congratulating one another for being employed there and engaging in, quote, work that really amounted to pampering themselves. One purchase was for $30,000 on trinkets marketing employees' anniversaries, or marking their anniversaries. The agency's office was absurdly oversized, but it refused to move. It hired a consultant for a hallway improvement project to decorate. It had an in-house gym for employees and purchased a $1,000 TV for the gym, a $3,867 ice maker, and a $560 stereo. The expenses that were actually business-related were hardly better. It paid, for example, $895 for Suzanne Nichtcher's enrollment in the English Essentials, a grammar refresher course, and $735 for Lakeisha Stewart to attend listening and memory skill development course. I want to take a break and continue on with more of the expenses at one of the many departments that have been eliminated thanks to DOGE under the Trump administration. I'm Nick Reed. Continuing this investigative piece that was actually from a decade ago, the Daily Wire, inside the now shuttered federal agency where employees lived like reigning kings. Now, the investigation was done 10 years ago, but this is done in light of the fact that this is one of the agencies that Trump has ordered to be shut down. Continuing on, the FMCS used federal jobs as a spigot of cash for friends and relatives. Allison Beck, a former union lawyer who became a top FMCS official, employed her own sister-in-law as a, quote, special assistant. And an inspector general found evidence that she tried to create a high-level job for another friend. FMCS employees allegedly steered contracts to friends, allowing the friends to write the statement of work that would be used to choose the contract winner, resulting in, of course, their friend as the selected choice. Such trainers were paid $1,500 per day per person to train FMCS staff, plus $163 an hour for travel. When a low-level employee eventually said the extra travel pay ran afoul of federal rules, a contractor made clear he viewed it as an entitlement, huffing, quote, work we have successfully performed for the agency for more than a decade at great personal sacrifice, I should add, will be taken away unless we comply in an unquestioning manner with your edict. Scott Beckenbaugh, top agency official, was paid $174,000 a year, but that wasn't enough. He had his duty station listed as Iowa so that he could have all of his living expenses and food paid for in D.C., which is where he actually lived and worked. By the way, this is the sort of stuff that if you did, this would be embezzling. This would be the sort of thing that you would go to prison for. So he listed Iowa as his home so he could have all of his living expenses and food paid for in D.C., or when he actually worked in D.C., as if he was on a 6-year-long business trip. When an employee raised the issue to an agency lawyer, the lawyer told him he, quote, should not raise the issue. It could open a can of worms, end quote. FMCS hired a former mail carrier who lived in Pennsylvania, Luann Glazier, for a high-level D.C.-based job and agreed to pay for her to stay in a hotel for half of every month, even though it would have been easier to find someone better qualified who didn't need to be put up in a hotel to simply do her job. Paul Voigt, a human resources official, was listed as living in D.C., even though he actually lived in Wisconsin, in order to fraudulently obtain higher cost of living pay. Voigt's boss was Arthur Perlstein, who left the agency to become a law professor and was then rehired after his academic career imploded in a plagiarism scandal. His first move in his new job was terminating an independent investigation into FMCF staff abusing taxpayer funds for personal gain. Cohen, for his part, steered work to his previous employer despite signing ethics forms saying that he would not. Many of the agency's top employees lived outside the typical Washington, D.C. commuting area and only stopped in the area occasionally in an era before telework was routine. Its CFO, Fran Leonard, would come to the office twice a week but leave by 2 p.m. The agency had also, inexplicably, an office in Honolulu. It funded constant travel of its employees to exotic locales on the pretext that it was drumming up business for the federal agency, an admission that there was little demand for the agency's existence. In 1 month, Beck traveled to Italy, Switzerland, where she conducted a business meeting over video chat. Then she went to Tunisia and an island off the coast of Georgia. She flew first class and forced the taxpayers to reimburse her for mileage when she drove to her vacation home in Maine. The agency had 3 full-time media relations staffers, none of whom would even speak to me, almost certainly one of the only reporters to ever bother calling. The agency's existence is predicated on the idea that it is an impartial mediator biased neither towards labor nor management, but its staff largely comes from a union background, and it gave out grants to promote union membership. But it was too incompetent to do much ideological damage. Its employees' comfort always came before actually helping the unions. Anyone could request cash grants from the agency with the only requirement that they mention some nexus with unions, however tortured. It doled out a seemingly random assortment of giveaways to private businesses, perhaps because they were the only ones who even knew the grants existed. It gave $63,000 to a hospital that went bankrupt, $51,000 to a child care company to help it pay for government licensing fees, and $57,000 to a company to, quote, strengthen of culture and continuous improvement to drive us to world-class excellence, end quote. What surprised me most about my FMCS investigation was what happened afterwards. Nothing. An inspector general made a referral to the FBI, but there were no prosecutions. Instead, President Barack Obama nominated a chief subject of the investigation to the top job. A decade later, Trump has done what even the agency's own employees said should have happened: shut it down. Now, this is emblematic of the culture that has been created among the elite. It is take care of yourselves and take care of your friends and family. That entire agency, using taxpayer dollars to not do anything other than live high on the hog and travel all over the world. And to the one employee paying his wife thousands of dollars to paint portraits of employees, paying for their vacation homes, lying about where they lived so that they could get cost of living increases. The sort of thing that would put you and me in prison if we did that in the private sector. And when the FBI got the referral to investigate, no prosecutions, and instead, Barack Obama handing out promotions. Because corruption, for way too long, has paid off big in Washington, D.C., and it makes it all that much more clear why all of these people are screaming to high heaven that Donald Trump is putting a stop to it. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed.
Springfield's Talk 104.1, your first alert forecast from Ozarks' first meteorologist, Tom Schmidt, sponsored by Wolfpack Cleaners, your residential and commercial cleaning professionals. Today, we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 52. Tonight, mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 66. And on Saturday, mostly sunny with a high near 68.
All right, so Trump is to sign order shuttering the Department of Education today. Town Hall reporting it's beginning to sound like a broken record, but the executive order to abolish the Department of Education is coming tomorrow. This was published yesterday. For weeks, there were rumblings and behind-the-scenes moves to corroborate what President Trump wanted to do with the failed agency. It is infuriating all the right people, like the heads of teachers' unions. Randy Weingarten is on the verge of institutionalization over the move, and now the day is here. The president's expected to sign the order via USA Today. Trump set to sign the long-anticipated executive order Thursday that seeks to eliminate the U.S. Department of Education, delivering on a signature campaign promise to try to dismantle the agency, according to senior Trump officials. Trump is expected to sign the order, which has been in the works for weeks, at a White House ceremony attended by several Republican governors and state education commissioners. He should have craploads of teachers there, too, I would say. Trump will direct his Education Secretary, Linda McMahon, to take all necessary steps to facilitate the closure of the Department of Education and return education authority to the states, according to a White House summary of the order reviewed by USA Today. It also called for the uninterrupted delivery of services, programs, and benefits on which Americans rely. That part, of course, will be completely and totally ignored by the media. in order to take aim at regulations and paperwork required by the Department of Education, arguing federal guidance in the form of a Dear Colleague letter from the department, redirect resources towards complying with ideological initiatives which divert staff time and attention away from school's primary role of teaching, according to the White House summary. So the purpose here is to take the dollars that are currently being funneled to the Department of Education and instead place them in education institutions that are going to do a better job allocating those funds. Any reasonable person would say, yeah, that makes sense. Because then the dollars become more effective. If you really truly care, if you have listened to this show long enough, you know that money or lack of money is not the problem with education in this country. Per student, we're at the top of the list in terms of dollar amount spent. But when it comes to results, we're at the bottom of the list in the world. You know, it's really interesting because people on the left will constantly point out, and I'm not saying they're the only ones, but the point I'm going to make here is regarding the left. And when it comes to healthcare, what do they love to tout? That we spend more money, yet they say we get worse health, and so that's proof that it needs fixed, right? It is proof. It is so broken that to many on the left, it's reasonable to murder the CEO of a health insurance industry or company. That's how broken it is. And the evidence they always give is the fact that we spend this much per person, yet our life expectancy is down here. But when it comes to education, and we spend more per person than any other country, yet we're at the bottom of the list, that you can't change at all. Oh, no, don't do anything about that. Now, in reality, the comparison is a very apples to oranges comparison. But given their perspective and their argument that you can determine a system is broken simply by the fact that, we spend this much per person, yet the results are so poor, why does that only apply to healthcare, but it doesn't apply to education? In fact, their response is the exact opposite. Our healthcare system needs to be completely wiped out and overhauled because we spend so much per person, yet the results are so poor, according to their assertion. Education, same scenario, same situation in terms of dollars and results, yet that is sacred? That you can't change any whatsoever? Explain that. You can't explain it. The system does not work. And every single child that graduates under this system is being ripped off, is being failed. And anyone who screams about how awful this is going to be, either they have no idea what they're talking about or they do not care about children's education. They are just using kids like they use every other person or every other issue as a means to attack political opposition for the sole goal of either retaining or obtaining power. There is no evidence that the Department of Education has helped education in this country. In fact, if you just want to look at when it started and then look at the decline of education in this country, those two things go hand in hand. Now, is one responsible for the other? Again, that is a different discussion, but it certainly hasn't helped. And what is hilariously telling is that the left, largely educated in the public institutions, they're the ones who promote that very evidence. They're the ones that are out there noting, oh, look, we have these horrible graduation rates and reading levels are down and math levels are down, and Trump wants to get rid of the Department of Education, not realizing they are making his point to some degree. without question, this is a good thing. Now, I do want to also point out, because I understand that there can be some confusion here, here's what they do. And a lot of people who hate Trump fall into this trap. They will be presented with a list of things that currently the Department of Education does. And that will include what it is they do with the money. So, for example, Pell Grants, or scholarships, or this or that. And so they are led to believe, falsely, that because the Department of Education is going away, all of that funding goes away. No, in fact, much of the purpose of this move is the opposite. It is to make sure that those dollars, through more local agencies and institutions, are spent more effectively so that the recipients of it benefit more than they currently are. That's something I think most reasonable people recognize and understand. If you are somebody who truly, honestly cares about steps to, at least towards, a better system for educating our children, this is without question a very, very good first step. Springfield's Talk 104.1, I'm Nick Reed. Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. I like this one. I don't even know where to start. Emily went above and beyond in absolutely every way, from finding our forever home to selling ours. She was amazing in today's market to ensure you get the house you want. Having a realtor who knows the industry and is quick to respond is an absolute must-have, and Emily did that for us. Another saying, Emily has helped us numerous times purchasing and selling real estate. She is always responsive, prepared, and overall great to work with during the entire process. Choose Emily, says another. Don't waste time and energy. She's understanding and patient, professional, kind, caring. We met her. She coached us with decluttering, staging our home for viewing, and identifying things that needed attention. She walked us through every step and was always in contact with the buyer's agent. That's just 3 separate people, separate lives, but they all had one thing in common, and that was an incredible experience with Emily Johnson, House Theory Realty. All right, so let's see here. Wanted to remind you at KSGF.com, you can get yourself registered to win tickets to see Live and Collective Soul, 90s rock legends, along with special guest Our Lady Peace in Grayland, Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Friday, August 22nd. Just go to KSGF.com in order to get yourself registered for that. And tomorrow we will be broadcasting live Scramblers, which is sponsored by our friends at Shirley's Heating and Air. We talked yesterday about the Associated Press and their need to correct the entire premise of a story as being false. And that story was claiming, Tulsi Gabbard said, that Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin were very good friends. And they're like, oh, we didn't mean Vladimir Putin. We meant the Prime Minister of India. Whoopsie-daisy, no big deal. But that's not simply a mistake that is incidental in paragraph 5, sentence 7. That was what their entire story was based on. Entire story. They weren't the only ones. A couple of the shows last night on MSNBC.
We go, though. Last night, we reported on excerpts of an interview between the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and an Indian TV news network, in which she said that Trump was good friends with a world leader. We said that world leader was Vladimir Putin, but the full interview shows that Gabbard was referring to Trump and Indian Prime Minister Modi.
A quick note, last night, The Last Word reported on excerpts of an interview between the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, and an Indian TV news network in which she said Trump was good friends with the world leader. Now, we said that world leader was Vladimir Putin, but the full interview was subsequently released, and it showed that Gabbard was referring to Donald Trump and the Indian Prime Minister, Narendra Modi.
Why does... other than people who just want to be told they're right. They don't want to be right. They don't want to know the facts. They don't want to really know what's going on. They've decided they hate Donald Trump, and so they just want to go, and they want that friend to tell them what they want to hear. You know, you come across those people, they just want to live in their own little world, and then maybe they have that one friend that they know. They'll tell me whatever it is I want to hear. I don't want to deal with reality. I want to be told I'm right, even though I know I'm wrong, and so I'm going to talk to that person. Other than going to major media like MSNBC with that purpose, I don't understand why anyone would listen to any of these networks. Notice they didn't even apologize. Those are two separate shows on MSNBC that did entire stories based around the claim that Tulsi Gabbard said that Donald Trump and Putin were very good friends. And there's like, oh, hey, by the way, it wasn't Putin, it was somebody else. And to move on to the next thing. I know we've become accustomed to this, and these are the things. Some of you will remember, depending on your age, once upon a time, people lost their jobs over. And it was the institution that or the company that hired them and then fired them wanted the world to know we fired them because they wanted people to understand these are not our standards. This is egregious. This is, in this instance, it's an entire story that's made up, not true. And there was a time, Dan Rather is an example of this. Dan Rather was the face of CBS. And you have to understand, that was during a period of time when the three major networks were the place to get news. It wasn't like it is today with all the different internet outlets and all of these different places to get news. I mean, it was ABC, CBS, and NBC. You know, during that period of time, you had CNN and Fox News, I believe, may have been around. But point being is Americans went to one of those three networks. And so we're talking about a massive shakeup to get rid of the face of your network, Dan Rather, and they did it because he had a story based off of a letter that came from somewhere, I'd still like to know exactly where, claiming that George Bush, who was running for president or re-election, one of the two, had got preferential treatment. And somebody or some persons recognized that, because there are people that have weird hobbies, the font that was in the letter that had supposedly been typed up back during that period of time did not exist in typewriters yet. And so the letter was proven to be untrue. They fired Dan Rather. They fired his producer. Got rid of him. Started from scratch. Because while they weren't certainly fans of George W. Bush, they at least wanted to send the message that we care about whether what we provide you as information is legitimate, whether it is true, whether we can be trusted and have credibility. And so even our top guy, we're starting from scratch, getting rid of our essentially our brand in order to make sure you understand that. Nowadays, examples of disinformation that are even more egregious than what Dan Rather did, they are treated as if it's just standard practice. Oh, just get on air at the end of the broadcast. Just take 10 seconds to be like, oh, by the way. No accountability. that demonstrates it is acceptable. No one gets reprimanded. Nobody gets, there's no form of attempt to demonstrate that we believe we can do better. Certainly nobody ever gets fired. And that's because that is the acceptable standard of the media today. And on a daily basis it occurs. To just have these completely absurd, made-up stories. And let me tell you the other thing that this is what I say needs to happen. I don't know how you make it happen. Perhaps people can start calling for it. I don't know who those people would be. Not just acknowledging, oh, yes, we had a story that wasn't true. But how did that happen? How did MSNBC, on 2 separate shows, end up with information that they believed was true? What process did they go through in order to determine this? That Tulsi Gabbard said that Trump was very good friends with Putin when she was talking about a completely different world leader. How did that happen? How do you, on 2 separate networks, with staff, with producers, with people who gather the news and give it to you, with all of these people, what is it that these people do? These networks, I believe, they have a responsibility to not just correct. I don't even need an apology necessarily. I want to know how it happened. They never tell us that, do they? And the reason for that is because the reasons that it happens, whatever, they're not good. It means they're either completely incompetent, and that is a standard they're okay with, or they know they're lying. Because what happens, and this is echoed by the Associated Press piece, they do a story that makes a fake claim, a fake assertion, as if it's absolutely true. Trump and Putin are very good friends, according to his own, cabinet member. That story's out there. It's out there forever. Those things do not go away. When it turns out not to be true or proven to be not, they get called out on it. Oh, then we'll do a 10-second at the end of a broadcast. Oh, by the way, that turned out not to be correct. Now, they know that is still out there, and they know how people operate. People operate, I have a friend that says Trump isn't friends with Putin, so I'm going to Google Trump good friends with Putin. Well, lo and behold, here comes a story from the Associated Press. Here comes a story from MSNBC about how Tulsi Gabbard says that Trump is real good friends with Putin. So I know some of this has to be deliberate because you cannot be so consistently incompetent. They create a fake headline that validates a false narrative, knowing that it will be out there forever. So whenever anti-Trump people do a Google search, they will find that story. Springfield's Talk 104.1. I'm Nick Reed. We got another hour straight ahead, and we will have Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, coming up. Now, if you've missed any of the show so far, we will have it up podcast form, the app, ksgf.com, Spotify, iTunes, and you can get it all there at your convenience. News in 60 seconds. I'm Nick Reed. Pyramid Roofing Company talk and text line. We were talking in the previous hour about the AP, MSNBC, these other outlets that were reporting entire stories based around Tulsi Gabbard claiming that Trump and Putin were very good friends, when in fact she was talking about the Prime Minister of India. And among other things, I noted that it would be really nice if these corrections also included an explanation as to how it happened. And someone had noted one of the statements that you read about the Tulsi Gabbard story saying Trump was friends with Putin. They said that after the rest of the interview was subsequently released, it became clear that she was talking about the Prime Minister of India, so they put their own excuse in that statement. And they did say, this is what they said, that we reported this story, that Gabbard said Trump was very good friends with a world leader. We reported it as Putin, but after the full interview was released, it turns out he was talking about the Prime Minister of India. But my question still is, okay, so then why did you say it was Putin? How did that happen? What was it about what was known of the interview, as limited as it may have been, that you somehow erroneously believed she was talking about Vladimir Putin? I want to know how that happened. Somehow this had to have happened. It happened with the Associated Press. It happened with two separate shows at MSNBC. Now, those two separate shows can be like, oh, well, we were just blindly following what the AP said because they're so credible. You know, they're the Bible of journalism. And so if they say it, it's got to be true. They're so well respected. But, okay, the original, though, Associated Press. What was it that made you claim she was talking about Putin? That's what I want to know. And I would really, truly, genuinely like to know what is it? Well, we just assumed. Because we know that they're such good friends. So clearly that's who we thought she was talking about. But it turned out that wasn't. Is that how? It's legitimate to ask. I want a great homeloan.com. If you have home loan needs, you have the characters and the team at your disposal. Your right hand, your personal assistant working on your behalf. And they're those sort of weird people that really love what they do. They love the industry. And when you have people that love what they do, that pours out into you as a consumer, as somebody that needs their goods or services, in this case, services. And that's why they love to talk with folks, even preliminarily, if you have questions about, how do I improve my credit score? Or this is what I owe on my credit cards. How much do I need to pay off in order to have my credit score go up? They know all of this stuff. And the reason the credit score is irrelevant, of course, is because of the impact it has on the terms and rates of loans that you get. Not just for your home loan, but everything in the future. So it gives residually as time goes on. So much benefit to get out of knowing the characters in the team, and so much not just in terms of knowledge, but the services as well. So whether it's that first question, or it is pulling the trigger on the refinancing or home purchase, or anything else in terms of the services they provide, reverse mortgages, it all starts at iwantagreathomeloan.com, because you do. Latest news update.
And the first alert forecast from Ozarks First meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 52. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny with a high near 66. And looking ahead to Saturday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 68.
Coming up, author of the week, Dr. Stanley Ridgely. The book is DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. That interview sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone, just south of Kearney. Coming up next. I'm Nick Reed. It's Thursday, which means it's time for Author of the Week, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. Our author, Dr. Stanley Ridgely, clinical full professor of strategic management at Drexel University, holding a doctorate and master's in international relations and security from Duke University, and an international MBA from Temple University, a Russian language linguist and former military intelligence officer. And his book is DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. And boy, have we really seen what I have long felt to be coming around the bend. I mean, just the college campus protest that we saw after October 7th, to me, was the clear result of DEI. And now with the Trump administration in there fighting back, this is all so very relevant. And I guess I would just want to start out asking you, is that really a connection there as I've seen it, and I think so many others, and how is it that DEI has become such a destructive force in our education system?
Well, hi, Nick. Thanks for having me on the show. I do appreciate it. This is an important issue, and I think that we have reason to be optimistic that this abomination of DEI is being rolled back in our universities thanks to the current administration. And you are exactly on the spot with regard to October 7th, 2023, and the anti-Semitic responses to that attack on the college campuses being in the realm or being the responsibility of DEI. I have an entire chapter in my book, DEI Exposed, on that very thing of how the template for DEI was basically applied to this Middle Eastern conflict between basically the only democracy and the only civilized country in the area and this terrorist organization. And it's the links are clear with what's going on the college campuses with regard to DEI, which indeed is the biggest con of the century in terms of what higher education has experienced. And you asked, how did we come to this sorry state of affairs? Well, it began, and I should say accelerated, in summer of 2020 with the BLM riots, and a lot of college presidents said, hey, we don't need that on our campuses. And very much like Jesse Jackson's Operation Push back in the 80s and 90s, where people said, hey, he said, hey, that's a nice university you got there. Be ashamed if something happened to it. Why don't you donate to our organization here? Well, the very same dynamic was put in place and was accelerated, and basically college administrations, presidents, spineless college presidents, bought into this myth of DEI, the myth being that America is a racist country, irredeemably so, that is riven with white supremacy culture, and that all whites are racist, and that all persons of color, as it's convenient, are victims of this racism. And that's the con story. And a bunch of, and I say like hundreds upon hundreds of these modestly educated people with no discernible skill set flooded onto the campus with exorbitant salaries to basically train people that this vision of America that they have concocted is somehow true. And so that's kind of the genesis of DEI Exposed. And I go into great detail about the people, the policies, the schools, the names, and the techniques, and what we can do to rein it in, focusing on the executive orders of the new administration and bringing accountability to our colleges and universities.
It is such an apparent gaslighting scam, and you just even look at the terminology, and the left is good at Antifa. Really does seem to represent fascism. They present themselves as anti-fascist. Those who are always claiming to be anti-racist are actually seemingly the most racist. And DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, anywhere that you see it implemented, it appears to be quite the opposite. Like, there's no diversity of thought. You have to believe this one thing. You've got to believe this class over here is the victim. This is the privilege. There's no inclusion of other thoughts, and certainly equity doesn't appear to, in reality, be at play either because of the way that different races are treated in an unequitable manner. How are they able to take this position and yet behave in the exact opposite and somehow pull that off?
Well, you hit the nail on it again. The fact that there's a front stage of DEI and there's a backstage of DEI. The front stage is the public face of DEI that looks noble, right and proper and moral. And people, generally speaking, people of goodwill say, hey, this sounds pretty cool. Who could be against diversity, equity, and inclusion? And in fact, they might be correct if that was exactly what was being done, because that sounds kind of Enlightenment inspired. And the mission of the university, as it's been in existence for, and certainly in the last 300 years. But that's not what DEI is all about. That's the front stage. The backstage is the actual, and let me say, the front stage is basically, we want to give everyone a fair shot, everyone a fair shot at the brass ring, all created equal, just teaching about slavery, teaching about race, and it's really none of those things. And if any of those things actually happen, it's merely as a byproduct or unintended consequences of what they actually do. The backstage is terribly toxic and noxious. They being the DEI people, the cadres, conduct trainings to divide people into two groups, and two groups only. One is oppressors, the other is oppressed, exploiters and exploited, evil and good, villains and victims. This is what they do. I document this extensively in DEI Exposed, and I think that you ask the reason why they're able to do this because most people of goodwill, don't know, and they don't want to know. They want to look at DEI as a kind of an empty decanter, and they want to be able to pour their own good feelings into it and talk about that. And I found this again and again and again with smart people who are good-hearted people, and they despise people who are against DEI, people who are knowledgeable of what it really is. It's racialist. It is divisive. When I say divisive concept, that's what we mean. We mean there's dividing people into villains or victims by virtue of their skin color. It's paranoid. It's paranoid behavior. They're teaching people into mental illness, and they're teaching a doctrine that is an alternative reality to what most people actually experience in their own lives.
We're talking with our author of the week, Dr. Ridgely. The book is DEI Exposed, How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. With the The last election, I think that signaled to a lot of people inside a bubble that maybe most Americans aren't supportive of this divisive approach. And so a number of the different companies out there that had really marketed themselves as embracing DEI began to back away from it. Some have stayed with it. But I think that potentially, I just want to get your thoughts on it. I'm suspect that some of these institutions primarily that have indicated that they're backing away from it are probably just giving it a different name, couching it as something else. What is it that people need to be wary of? Are there signals, if you will, or different that you're finding pop up iterations of DEI? What do people need to be wary of?
Well, I think that, I talk about this on the college campus, particularly because students they're particularly vulnerable because of the authority figures they encounter on campus. They're sometimes freshmen or might even be minors, and they're moving into a new phase of their life away from home, and et cetera, et cetera. And I would say, don't trust these people. What you have to be wary of is the people who want to inflict this type of ideology on you require that you trust them. And they require that you give them your trust, make yourself vulnerable, as these are their words, disclose your personal issues, your parents, your income, your friends. And this brings to the table a whole raft of things that they can attack you on. And they will attack you. Because to convince someone that they are guilty of something they have nothing to do with, that they are complicit in a white racist society, white supremacy society. This is bizarre when you think about it. Has nothing to do with anyone's lived experience. It has to do with an alternative reality that these people are trying to impose on people. So my advice would be, and in corporate America as well, you go into a training session and you think that, this is just going to be about, and understanding each other, getting along. But no, it's none of that. It's none of that. And it never is. These are people who believe in an ideology, and they are professing ideology in companies and in the universities. And I think the reason we're seeing a rollback is that people are finally saying, hey, I didn't buy into this. And the fact is, I believe in diversity, equity, and inclusion in my own definition of it, which is very much like the Enlightenment University and what we all have always believed. And this is actually, fairly true. The university is a marketplace of ideas. Different ideas come regardless, irrespective of who has them. And those ideas contend. And we accept the good ones and we kind of reject the bad ones. This is how alchemy and astrology and various pseudosciences and superstitions were expunged from the university, this marketplace of ideas. The problem with DEI is that there's no criticism allowed, and that this ideology is going to be imposed on people in a coercive method way.
It seems to me one of the effective tools they use is the insecurity of people who feel that they're not equipped to intellectually argue against DEI. They'll come up against a premise that they recognize is true. For example, we had slavery, and that is then presented as this systemic form of our culture and government that has automatically put people today of color at a disadvantage. And then, if you listen to or you watch or listen to a Charlie Kirk or a Ben Shapiro, and you're like, oh man, well, what they're saying totally disassembles that. But most people aren't equipped to do that. And so I think they keep quiet because they're afraid that they will expose themselves as not necessarily being that informed. What do you say to those people who keep silent because they're afraid that they don't know how to really counter some of that narrative?
Well, the thing is, history is never going to change. No matter what policies you enact today, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, history is not going to change. And you'll look to DEI proponents who will point to the death of George Floyd or will point to the legacy of slavery. Well, those things are not going to change. You point to Rosa Parks, you point to Emmett Till. Those things will never change. And to use those as justification of today's programs, we have to look at today's programs. What do these programs actually propound? What do they actually say we're going to do? And I would say, if someone says that to you, the history of slavery or this legacy of slavery, so okay, that's fine. We agree on history. We agree on historical fact. Now, how is what you propound, what you offer here, How is that going to correct anything? And let's investigate what constitutes this program, because I think this is usually left hanging. I see this all the time. I get lots of hate mail, as you might expect, and people are always referring to this historical legacy, and then they say, DEI initiatives, this is why we have them. I said, okay, fine. What are they? What are these initiatives that you're talking about? Let's not talk about this history, this event here, this event there, which is never going to change. You're using this as a kind of a prop or a justification to do something today that really has nothing to do, that will remedy the problems that you supposedly identified. I'll give you an example. At Princeton University in 2020, 300 faculty and staff signed a letter accusing Princeton University of rampant racism. Well, Connor Friedersdorf of The Atlantic contacted the 300 people who signed the letter and said, can you give me an example of rampant racism, overt racism that has occurred at Princeton University in the last, 15 years? Not a single person could give a single example of this rampant racism. And yet you find, well, the letter was justified by citing the murder of George Floyd, 5 years, that year. But it has absolutely nothing to do with what's going on today and what it is you actually want to do here on the college campus. So I would focus on what it is you want to do. What are the trainings? And move away from this so-called justification, which is really a recitation of history that no one disagrees with.
My final question for our author of the week, Dr. Ridgely, and again, the book is DEI Exposed: How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education. The word almost suggests the door is still open slightly enough to save higher education in this country. It does seem as if it is so deep culturally, the damage that has been done by DEI. You can swap out heads of the universities, but the problem is still there. What hope is there? And what will it take in order to move us away from these destructive policies?
Well, I think universities have shown themselves, generally speaking, to be unaccountable and incapable of overseeing their own affairs. You saw the devastating violence against our Jewish Americans on college campuses for the past year. The hope that we have, the optimism that I have, is that the universities are now coming under the investigative eye of the Department of Justice and are being held accountable. And that's what we're talking about here, accountability. 3 Ivy League presidents resigned last winter and spring because they were shown to have basically poor leadership skills and had allowed the situation to get out of control on their campuses. Well, if you will not control yourself, then the universities will have to be brought into line by the Department of Justice to obey the U.S. civil rights laws and recognize the Equal Protection Clause of the U.S. Constitution. I think we're in the midst of a sea change here, rolling back the authoritarians. These are people, I should say, that occupy these well-heeled, well-compensated bureaucracies. They're modestly educated, and they have no discernible skill sets. They really do not. They're ideologues, and their primary function is to train students, faculty, and staff into this alternative reality. And that is the truth, the ugly truth of DEI that I expose in my book, DEI Exposed.
Again, thank you so much. Our author of the week, Dr. Stanley Ridgely, and as he mentioned, the book, it's DEI Exposed: How the Biggest Con of the Century Almost Toppled Higher Education, sponsored by ABC Books on North Glenstone. For Springfield's Talk 1041, I'm Nick Reed. KSGF.com. Get yourself signed up if you want. 90s rock legends, live and collective, Soul this summer. Special guest Our Lady Peace in Grayland at Thunder Ridge Nature Arena, Friday, August 25th. That is at KSGF.com. And you can also register through the mobile app if you would like to do so. We'll chat also about our upcoming bracket. Every year we try to do a fun little bracket. We have a new one that will launch on Monday, I believe, and $250 up for grabs on that one in terms of a prize. But we also think you'll enjoy it at the same time. So the bracket itself will be a prize for all.
Springfield's Talk 1041, your first alert forecast from Ozarks' first meteorologist Tom Schmidt, sponsored by St. Clair the Ozarks Home Improvements. Today we'll see sunny skies throughout the day with a high near 52. Tonight mostly clear with a low around 34. For your Friday, partly sunny skies with a high near 66. And looking ahead to Saturday, we'll see mostly sunny skies with a high near 68.
All right, we got a new bracket challenge coming up. We've done this. Will this be the third or fourth?
This is the third.
Third
So
year?
the first one we did like Trump's best nicknames, and then the year after that.
I think we had three. There was Trump best nicknames, but I think wasn't there best, like, was it Biden or Democrat quotes? And then last year was Biden.
We did
moments.
Biden's best moments.
But I thought there was one
I'm
that
gonna look at my
also,
folder.
yeah. Well, anyhow, this time around, it is going to be love letters from the left, and they are either text messages, emails, or social media postings directed at us. And not like full, we say love letters. We just try to think of something that sounded good on the ear. It's not like full emails or anything, usually just one or two sentences that really seems to personify what it is that we have come to expect from people on the left in their form of coexisting and compassion and, love Trump's hate and all that stuff. You find that at times, actually, they're quite horrible people. And so we thought that would be fun. Garrison Roofing and Guttering is sponsoring it this year. And the way the bracket will work is you will, should launch on Monday, you'll go and you'll choose in the bracket your favorite, and then next week again, and then the next week again. And every time that you pick your favorites in the bracket, that is an entry to win the $250 Visa gift card from Garrison Roofing and Guttering. Did you find out?
No, I don't. I only see two other ones.
Well,
in
maybe
there.
okay, may have just been the two then.
Do you want me to give you a little taste of some of the brackets?
Are
Or do
they?
you want me to, do you wanna
yeah,
wait?
sure, yeah.
Okay.
We should all, you know what we should also do? Well, it's fine. It's coming up. I don't want to give it away, but we can read a few of them.
Okay. Well, I'll just read one.
Okay.
I'll just read one, and it's the one that I share with everybody who's like, so what are some of the things that people have said to you for this love letters from the left? And one of them that I pulled, it was a text message. This is in reference to us leaving for the KSGF Great Escape. Somebody had texted in and said, I hope your plane crashes. So that's a little taste.
Just to give you an idea of the tolerant left, and people do ask oftentimes, we'll be at lunch bunch or happy hour, and like, there's so many crazies out there. I bet you really get a lot of that stuff, and it's not the volume isn't in the number of people, but in the number of texts that come from a very few people that are very hyper-focused and kind of obsessed. And so we have tons of material from which to work, but it really comes from a relatively few number of people that apparently don't have lives other than sitting there listening to us and then sending message after message after message of things that never really have any substance other than just hating on us, and we find it hysterical.
And hey, now
so we hope
got a
that
new promo.
Yeah, so we hope that you will enjoy it as much as we do, because we do. And that was one thing I remember. It was a long, long time ago, and I was working elsewhere, and there was it's like a chat room that was set up, and there was an entire discussion thread devoted to dogging on me. And I had at one point sent it because there was some of this stuff I actually found to be clever and funny. Most of it wasn't. Most of it's pretty elementary, but every once in a while there was something funny. And I remember once I had sent the link to my mother because I thought it was funny, and she has a very similar sense of humor that I do. But she was like, I don't even think she understood why I really sent it to her. She's like, are you, like, what's going on? Are you in trouble? And I was like, no. I said, this is funny stuff. And once she realized what I was, doing and that I found it funny, then she did as well. I don't even remember what the point was. Oh, this stuff is funny to us. And so
it really is.
I hope it is. When we put it up there, I hope that you don't think, oh, that's awful. I mean, you can think that, but don't think it on behalf of us, because we find it quite humorous.
Yeah.
We enjoy it.
We do.
Most of the time, if you watch on the live stream and you see us laughing hysterically, it's usually because we're reading, or Sarah's reading to me some of the postings that some people have been making. This is a completely and totally random thing, but it's something I've been forgetting to do, and I have no idea if this is something that'll be of any interest to you. Coming up, there is a performance or a couple of performances at Juanita K of Hadestown. And when the tickets, remember I was always wanting to get some for the girl child for Christmas, because she loves Hadestown, and it is one of her favorites. And so, it was Caitlin at the Symphony. You had actually asked her, even though she does Symphony, hey, do you know when these are going to go on sale? And she said, well, I'll find out and let you know. Well, anyhow, I was able to, like the day they went on sale, to purchase great orchestra C, 18, 19, 20. Those are the C. I mean, just right up front and center. And really excited about. Well, then it was subsequent to that gift for Christmas. And I got three. I got three of them because I wasn't going to go. But my wife was going to go, and then that way she could bring a friend. Well, it would turn out that the night of that performance is the night before opening night of a production that she's involved in, and so she can't go. There's just no way around it. So I have these tickets, and you cannot get refunds. And I said, well, and my wife was going to go and find someone. She's like, no, let's just sell the tickets, because we're poor and we're unloading everything we can. No, I'm kidding. And that way somebody can enjoy it. And so I was like, well, I'll just mention it on air, see if anybody wants them. So that's what I'm doing. My preference, I'm going to try to sell all three of them together. If time goes on and I'm unable to, then I'll sell a pair or individually. They're $88 a piece. Now, when it was all, I purchased the three of them, and it was almost $70 for additional fees. That's almost the price of a third ticket.
Jeez.
almost the price of a
What-
third ticket because they're $84 a piece, and it was $60-some, like $64, $68 for taxes and
Right.
fees and whatever else. Of course, then you got to pay $20 for parking if you're going to
Yeah.
park in the parking garage. I'm really selling this, aren't I?
Yeah, you are. What day was it again?
It is. Oh, that's a really good. Let me look. I have them in my e-wallet, so I can pull it up here real quick. It's April. I want to say the 19th, but April 9th.
Okay.
That's a very important. Yes, April 9th.
And I think 7:30 is probably the
7:30.
performance. Yeah.
And they are orchestra row C, so they're very good seats, and the seats 18, 19, and 20. So I whenever I buy tickets for the girl child and my wife, or some of them I go to, some I don't. I'm like, you know what? I'll spend extra money to get the really good seats because it's an experience, and so they're great seats. If you're interested in purchasing the 3 tickets, $252. And that is just the straight ticket fee, $84 a piece. You can just email me, nick.reed@ksgf.com. And if you get lost in that or whatever, you can check the text line. But I'm throughout the day checking my email, and the text line I only really see when I'm in the studio. So that's nick.reed@ksgf.com if you're interested in those tickets. I told my wife, she goes, "Can you do that?" And I was like, "I don't know. I don't see why not."
Well, you just did it.
I just
And
did it.
I just allowed it happen. I helped even. I was like,
yeah.
it's 7:30.
I'm not making a profit. I'm not like selling them for. In fact, I'm taking a cut.
Right.
I'm eating the cost of the taxes and whatever other fees that are attached to it. Someone had texted in regarding the love letters from the left.
Mm-hmm.
They come from jury professors. That's
Okay.
they were suggesting some of those comments do, perhaps, maybe,
Possibly.
possibly. All right. Pyramid Roofing Company, talk at text line 447 KSGF. Oh, first, before that, I saw this story. I thought it was great. Man who had prison sentence commuted by Biden now facing drug firearms related charges. That didn't take long. A convicted criminal whose prison sentence was commuted by former President Joe Biden is back behind bars. Willie Frank Peterson, 52, convicted of conspiracy to distribute cocaine in 2023 and was sentenced to 6 years and 3 months in jail. His sentence began on September 13th, according to court records. Per a January 17th executive grant of clemency, Biden commuted Peterson's sentence to 20 months, allowing him to leave custody shortly after. On Monday, Peterson booked for multiple drug-related offenses in Alabama, charging him with 2 counts of unlawful possession of a controlled substance and a count of possession of marijuana. He was also arrested for possession of drug paraphernalia and 3 firearm-related offenses, per police reports. I suppose Biden's defense could be, I didn't actually commit. We don't know. This is one of those last-minute auto pen commutations that nobody really knows who actually pushed the old auto sign button on the auto pen. So I don't know. We don't know who was responsible for this, but safely back behind bars. Sarah Myers, everyone.
Thank you, the Pyramid Roofing Company. If you have hail damage and need to file a claim, most insurance companies have a 1 to 2 year window for you to not only file that claim, but also to complete the work that needs to be done. So if you think that you have storm damage from last year, but maybe you just filed a claim on your vehicle, you didn't even think about your roof, or maybe you noticed that all of your neighbors had damage, but you didn't even think about doing a roof inspection. There is still time, but that window is running out. And that's why I want to recommend Josh and his team over at the Pyramid Roofing Company. Now, the Pyramid team, they offer free roof inspections, and they check everything from your vents, your gutters, and they even get inside your attic, and they check your decking as well. And they take photos and videos of everything so you can see exactly what they see. If you do need to file a claim, the Pyramid team, they also work through that process with you. So if it is time to schedule that free roof inspection, give Josh a call today. You can find all of the contact information for the Pyramid Roofing Company under the Sarah's Endorsements tab at KSGF.com. What is going on with our phone
There's so
line?
many things.
He is not giving away the tickets.
Maybe they're wanting to buy them.
Maybe. Okay. Well.
Yeah. All right, so CNN has been reporting as a pillar of the community, an illegal immigrant who has been evading law enforcement for years and years. I mean, she's not, as we know, best as we know, a murderer or anything, but this is the media. Once again, they ignore, for the most part, the reality of those criminals that are being deported, these gang members, these murderers, these rapists. What they try to do instead is find someone that they can portray as Mother Teresa, that the evil Donald Trump is kicking out of the country, and that is what you're supposed to think about. A CNN reporter called an illegal immigrant who pled guilty to a charge related to using a fake Social Security number and who hid out in a church for 3 years a pillar of the community. Well, of course. ICE took Jeanette Vizguera into custody while she was working at a Denver area Target store Monday, according to USA Today. CNN reporter Gloria Pizmino told CNN News Central co-host Sarah Schneider that the illegal was, quote, a symbol of resistance. Well, that's why she's, of course, an upstanding citizen. A symbol of resistance to Trump's effort to enforce our border laws. Quote, she's sort of become a symbol of resistance, if you will, especially in immigrant communities during the first Trump administration, when she took refuge inside that church in order to avoid being deported. Now, this all traces back to 2009, when Vizguera was stopped by during a traffic stop over expired inspection stickers, and during that traffic stop, she was found to have fake Social Security number on her. That set off a whole series of events for several years of her evading law enforcement, where she's been fighting her deportation order, and it's in 2016 that she took refuge in the church. She's become an international symbol, a big activist in the immigrant community in Denver, and in recent days, I spoke to her daughter yesterday. Vizguera told her that she had a feeling she would be surveilled by law enforcement. She could tell. She was being followed on her way to work, and it was on Monday night while she was working at a local Target on a work break that immigration officers surrounded her and took her into custody. Now she's been in detention in Denver ever since. She was charged in connection with Social Security fraud, or the Social Security number, and pled guilty to attempted possession of forged documents. Pazmino reported in an article on CNN.com last updated Wednesday, while charges involving expired license plates and driving without a license or insurance were dropped. Now, she, of course, is being portrayed as this hero for breaking the laws and defying these deportation orders. The Democrat mayor of Denver posted Jeanette Vizguera is a mom of American citizens, a Target employee, a nonprofit leader, and an immigration reform advocate with no violent criminal history. Her detainment is not about safety. This is Putin-style persecution of political dissents. So according to Democrats, expecting the law to be applied to everyone equally is Putin-style persecution. See, in their minds, the law should only apply to people you don't like. And people who serve your purpose, don't worry about it so much. See, that's actually Putin's style way of doing things. The non-Putin style way of doing things is if there are laws in place, they apply to everyone equally. Everyone must follow them. That's non-Putin style. What Putin style is, this group of people over here benefit me politically, so you know what? We don't really need to apply the law to them. Now, these people over here, I find to be problematic, so let's go ahead and utilize those laws in order to punish those people. Now, which of the two political parties picks and chooses to whom the law applies? I think we know the answer to that. This is yet another situation in which the Democrats are projecting whom it is that behaves like Putin. You know, out of curiosity, see how dismissive they are? Oh, she had a forged Social Security card, no big deal. I went to the government site regarding Social Security and looked up penalties according to the Social Security Administration. Section 141 of the Social Security Handbook makes two statements that address the acts the agency will prosecute. Well, depends on who you are. Number one, you may be prosecuted for criminal fraud for knowingly furnishing false information as to your identity in connection with the establishment and maintenance of Social Security records. That's what she did. You may also be prosecuted for criminal fraud for using the Social Security number obtained on the basis of false information or for falsely representing a number to be your Social Security number if you've done this either to obtain or increase a Social Security payment or to obtain financial benefit from any other federal program. So just having it knowing that it wasn't yours legitimately is reason for prosecution. Section 141 describes a wide range of penalties upon conviction of these crimes, which include fines ranging from $500 to $10,000, imprisonment or both. Terms of imprisonment range from 1 to 15 years. So in addition, just to what we know of driving without a license, having expired license plate, she committed a crime that calls for up to $10,000 in penalties and 15 years in prison. Yet, according to Democrats, she's a pillar of the community. Now, if you're an American citizen and you commit that sort of fraud, you're held accountable. You know, they crack down on you. I mean, heck, even in Springfield right now, if you don't, what's the latest crackdown as an American citizen? If you have your plates expired, if you don't have all your papers in order showing that you have been in compliance with the government when it comes to your vehicle, then they'll come take it away from you. Man, boy, if you're in this country illegally, though, you're a pillar of the community for breaking such laws. As usual, with the Democrat Party, law-abiding American citizens are at the back, while those who come into this country illegally and virtue signal violating our laws are labeled pillars of the community. Well, this is interesting. Hollywood stars, many of which, of course, told us the re-election of Trump would mean end of democracy as we know it, and their type would be thrown in concentration camps or disappeared. They have all, there's over 400 of them, Ben Stiller, Paul McCartney, Ron Howard, and others, asking for President Trump's help protecting artificial intelligence copyright rules. Well, look at them coming to the dictator for help. These people are just so gross. They run around telling everyone they believe that he's a dictator. He's going to throw them in concentration camps. He's going to cancel elections. But the minute that they think he can help them, all of a sudden, oh, please, Mr. President. I was thinking about that anti-Trump left-wing NPR reporter that hit Trump in the face with a boom mic, and how she, like so many others on the left, think Trump is a dictator. Do you know what would happen if some reporter hit Kim Jong-un in the face with a mic? I think there needs to be a re-understanding of what a dictator is. See you tomorrow at Scramblers.